but I bet you that in the glorious future of SSDs, we'll definitely be able to save some hardware. Cool. Any other questions? Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about your QA and deployment process?
Yeah. So at Yelp, there's basically we don't have a QA team like a lot of other software companies. We essentially, because we're doing the website thing, it's easy to deploy hotfixes. So we don't have anybody we don't have certainly not a set of people that are responsible for making sure all the features of the website work. That's basically you when you deploy code. But we do have a somewhat comprehensive suite of unit tests. I mean, I think everybody's test coverage could always be a little better, but we've got some pretty good unit tests that we are required to run before pushing code. And we do peer code reviews for everything. It's a hard requirement. So those two things have historically gotten us really far with QA. In terms of deployments, so for a long time we would deploy code essentially all at once, download code to all of our nodes, and then basically essentially all at once, or with like a 30-second stagger, sort of change symlinks to the new version of the code. And that worked okay, but as you could imagine, re-importing all of our Python code all at once would essentially lead to outages. It takes on the order of some seconds to warm up a web server for us, and if you're doing that all at once, you would see our down page, which is a picture of our office dog Darwin eating an Ethernet. We've recently alleviated that by essentially doing rolling deployments. In the past, it was hard for a lot of developers to come to terms with the idea that deployments aren't atomic, and that your code actually has to be roll forward and roll back safe. But we've gotten a lot better at that, and we tend to do sort of these rolling deployments where we'll flip some nodes and then sort of wait for things for load to come down a little bit, and then flip some more nodes and wait for load to come down. And that's resulted in a much smoother deployment process.
Is that automated?
Yeah.
So, okay, in that case, how do you do schema updates?
It depends. For a lot of schema updates, if you're dropping a column that isn't used anymore, or changing the semantic meaning of a column, you essentially have to push code which knows how to deal with both cases. So instead of being able to just push new code and everything is on the new version and everything just kind of works, you have to be aware of that hairy sort of middle case, which is something that you should be doing anyway, because if you have to roll back code, if somebody else in your push causes problems, then not being able to roll back to a safe version of the code can be is a game breaker, right? So yeah. So you have to be aware of that. For larger schema updates, we basically do it during downtime. We're working on online schema changes, but not yet. Cool. Any more questions?
Yeah, I was curious about, so with a single write, how do you scale that horizontally? Because at some point you have to start splitting that up.
Yeah. So yeah, that's true. Having a single write master will only get you so far. It's been pretty good to us so far, but assuming that Yelp continues to succeed, there will be a point in the future when a single machine accepting writes won't cut it. And at that point, basically, you're left with just master-master replication, sharding, basically. And that a lot of places have done master-master replication successfully. I think Box just moved to a system where they use master-master. Pinterest started with master-master. Those two are obviously much more write-heavy applications. But there's a lot of software involved with it. You have to figure out, you have to essentially hash, an ID when you're going to store it, and then figure out sort of what node that's going to live on. And it requires like a coordination master, which knows how to say which shard your data should go on, or where it should come from.
So you would move straight to sharding instead of replication, or it would
you would probably keep replication, but you'd end up having you'd probably have your write master would all of a sudden be its own box with a couple computers that are essentially sharded, and then things from that sort of logical entity replicate.
Okay.
We haven't really evaluated a lot of strategies for it yet because we're simply not at that point. But
okay.
And it's not clear that we will be for a while. but that's classically the sort of the way forward with MySQL. Any other questions? Well, I'm going to do one last hiring pitch. Like I said, we're doing hiring full-time and interns, front-end and back-end engineering. If you're interested, check out yelp.com/careers. Thanks, guys. I'll be around if you want to ask me questions. Launch really here.
Have you guys considered moving off MySQL not because of like performance issues, but other MySQL issues in general?
No, it's